Hello and welcome back to Ambitious. Today, we are talking about something that you have been feeling. If you are in business right now, things have shifted, things have changed, but sometimes it's a little bit difficult to put your finger on it as to why does it feel like getting leads, getting them to nurture, getting them to convert has never felt harder. And today, I'm going to explain to you why things have shifted, how they are shifting, and most importantly, what is the new funnel? Because I will tell you right now, the funnel that you are using during COVID, post-COVID is no longer. That is an old model that honestly is just outdated. It doesn't work. And we need to make sure that your process of how you're looking at a customer journey, i.e. someone finding you from getting curious about you and what it is that you do in your offers to literally becoming a client is dialed. And by the end of today, you're going to walk away with clarity of exactly what those pieces need to be. So without further ado, let's get into it. So let's go a little bit first to think of what is the old model, because the old model is the old funnel that we were using, I would say pre-COVID and then also during COVID itself. The thing you want to keep in mind is pre-COVID, there was genuinely less people online. There was less coaches, there was less agencies, there were literally less people doing online business. So therefore, the actual lead flow that businesses had was something that was coming in with a different perspective. They were coming in with a different level of clarity, a different level of trust. And when pre-COVID, you used to find somebody online who would be selling something, you didn't see thousands and thousands of other people every other click of a button on social media doing the same thing. It felt in some areas and industries like there was a handful of people that you could reference that would be the person that you would buy from. Now, when we think about the contrast, post-COVID, COVID allowed so many people to start businesses seemingly overnight. It meant that lots of people were out of their corporate jobs. They wanted to move into starting an online business, a coaching business, a course business, an agency. And so what we found is that there was this huge surge of people who moved online. The problem is a lot of those people who moved online were not particularly qualified. They were people who were looking for like a quick cash grab, something that they could do to make money during this difficult time. That, as a result, meant that when they signed clients and they had people coming into their world, those people did not get supported, did not get the thing that they actually needed. And as a result, it broke trust. So from that point onward, we've been seeing that there's a good amount of people in our industry who frankly have been falling off. You've probably seen this. People that you were consuming maybe 5 years ago that you ask yourself now, where is that person on the internet? I remember being in group programs and masterminds with people who some of them did what I did, but some of them were fitness coaches, some of them were mindset coaches. And like, I can't even find them online right now because they have literally quit their business and gone back to a 9 to 5. So there has also been this like shedding of the online space of people who maybe weren't in it for the right reasons or just simply realized that over time that their business wasn't growing at such a rate that it was allowing them to stay in this space. So there has been a little bit of an editing or a refinement of who's online, but without question, even regardless of the people that have dropped out, we still have a very high number of people that are starting and growing and scaling online businesses. So yes, this means that as a result in your industry, it is more saturated. This is not just like a feeling that you're having. This isn't, why do I feel like there's so many people doing what I do now? This is literally facts. You can look up the data. There are so many people that have created businesses and also are scaling them now. So your competitor has a lot of other people to reference. They have a lot of other people that they can research and cross-reference when they're trying to make a decision as to who they want to work with. So previously, the old funnel of like the 2021 was not something that had that level of competition. So therefore, literally think about it. If you're driving down a road and you see 2 coffee shops, you don't really need a lot of decision making. You're like, it's either go to the left or go to the right. It's very straightforward. We've shifted that now. We're now in this place in our market where when you're driving down that road, you've got your vegan coffee shop, you've got the coffee shop that specializes in iced coffees and cold brew, you've got the the mom and pop shop. You've got like the Starbucks, that's like a mass chain. You've got the Dunkin' Donuts. Now you've got options. So it means that when we are businesses, marketers, salespeople, which is ultimately the skills that we have to ask ourselves, do we actually adapt our strategy each quarter, each year to the current landscape of what's actually happening in this moment in time in business? So previously in 2021, when it came to the people that were driving down your metaphorical road, this is something where people used to find a cold ad and they used to think nothing of it. There wasn't, again, a ton of these ads being pumped at them. There wasn't the volume that there is now, and also the platforms that there is now. And so at the time, you could get a cold ad for probably what would have been a course, an ebook. And what it meant is that there was this flow that people would work through. They would see a cold ad. Sometimes it would be social media content. And typically that ad would go either directly to a checkout or it would go to a lead magnet, something that would capture, an email of somebody and allow you to have ongoing communication with them so that if they didn't buy the first time, at a minimum, they're going to be buying after you continue to email them. So what we found is when looking in 2021, the journey was a lot faster. Like when we think about a customer journey, all of us have this dream of it being like they find me, they consume a piece of content, they download something, they go to one of my experiences, and then boom, they become a high ticket client. That linear experience for me and for every other business owner online, it's the dream. We want people to go from curious to client in this perfect line of a set of events and boom, that's it. The reality is we're not doing that anymore. And that sequence of events doesn't actually exist. One of the biggest things that I typically help people with is understanding customer journey and the journey of someone going from curious to client is not a line. Now we have this really interesting scrumbled up ball of yarn is how I want you to think about it. And now there are all of these interweaved pathways of what it can look like when someone goes from finding you to buying from you. This is even something you can ask yourself. Have you consumed somebody and not bought from them yet? You're still just consuming their free content. Maybe there's somebody that you listen to the podcast of and similar to this. And you're like, hey, yeah, I listened to the podcast, but I haven't bought yet. Or I listened to their podcast and I also did download their webinar, but I haven't bought from them yet. Or I'm on their email list. I love their emails. And I also got a book of theirs, but I'm not a client yet. You'll notice here in all of these different examples, there are a series of different touch points and different pathways happening all at the same time. So yes, would it be great if we could just draw a line of this is like step 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the steps they're going to take. You can, but you have to recognize that not every single person in today's current market is going to take that literal sequence and steps of events. Sometimes people have 3 touch points with you. Other times they have 7 touch points with you. And other times they have 70 touch points with you. So this is why it's really important that we understand if we're just looking at the old model of it being this sequence of steps, we're really missing out on a lot of opportunities for how people are buying now. When people are seeing the new brand online or some new creator online or a new handle, the reality is it is no longer just about, oh, I see a quick ad and I move. Now, if someone sees an ad of yours, you're going to have that person going from your paid advertisement to going and verifying you instantly. If you're somebody who does ads, or maybe you're even somebody who does boosting of your posts online or trial reels, you're getting in front of an audience that maybe is not as familiar with you in some way, shape, or form. Maybe you're on even a podcast as a guest and you're getting in front of people that don't know you. One of the first things we do now, because we are in such a trust recession, because of the fact of how many people have joined online, people's next step is going to be going to your organic social media and saying, is this person who they are saying they are or who I perceive them to be? Because there's a lot of people who are imposters online, unfortunately. And there's a lot of people who are technically quote unquote fake experts, people who say that they're great at something, but really don't have the credentials nor the proof to back that thing up. So what it means is we instantly go in now with a level of distrust. We're going in saying, I need to verify. So how do we verify? You're going to go to your social media and check out who this person is. You're probably going to go to their link in bio, check out what's there. Maybe it's a website. Maybe there's a freebie there. Maybe there's an application, maybe some testimonials. You're going to start to binge that. Maybe while on the website, you find that they have a podcast. You click that and you start to go to listen to a couple podcast episodes. Then while listening to the podcast, you feel like, oh my gosh, this is so great. This is exactly what I'm looking for. And you go to the show notes and now you apply. Look at how messy that journey was. They go from seeing you on a show or ad to going to social, to going to website, to going to your podcast, to binging the podcast, to then applying. So yes, would I have loved for them to just find you, go to the application, submit, become a client, boom, done. I would love for that to be everybody's sequence of events, but that is a very 2021 process. Your current business model of customer journey is now an ecosystem. So the question is, do you understand the components of the ecosystem and how to make sure that yours is designed intentionally? So first we have the actual entry point, i.e. how are people finding you? So it could be ads, it could be boost post, it could be trial reels. But the other way that most people are getting discovered now is through what's considered to be social search or SEO. So SEO, a lot of us, when we say SEO, we think website SEO, i.e. literally somebody typing our name into Google. And I would say it's not that doesn't happen. I have lots of clients who have traffic, including even our own business. We have great traffic from Google. The thing is, you and I both know if I recommend a restaurant to you, you're not going to Google. You're going to go to TikTok to see real, authentic reviews of that restaurant. You're going to go to Instagram to check out what pictures they have on social, or maybe even their tagged posts where other guests shared what they ate, right? You're going to go and potentially even look at Google reviews or Yelp reviews, right? We're going to be looking in multiple places. So this is why we have to understand when someone finds us, they're not finding us in the way that they used to, which is going to be either directly from an ad, from Google, or just direct on social. Social is the new search. So we use social as verification. That is the place where people are finding you. This is also something that will be suggested with this new AI development. So on AI, when someone searches a topic, so let's just say someone searches business scaling, if my SEO is done well on my website, on my social titles, on all of the topics that I talk about online, it's going to make it that much easier for AI, whether it's Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, to be able to recommend me as a resource to the person who's looking for that information. So we want to think, how are people finding us? Could be ads, could be social, could also be social search in the sense of that SEO is literally providing us to people and presenting us to them. And it honestly can be AI. So right now, if you're looking to get discovered, one of the things that we have to ensure is that you really are known for something very specific. You are someone who has a really specific set of topics. Maybe it's 3 to 5 different things that you cover, or there's one big, bold thing that you are known for. So if I was to name off, for example, Mel Robbins, do you think of the Let Them? If you think about Tony Robbins, what do you associate as his big thing? If I say Oprah to you, what's a buzzword or something that you think of, which is like, oh yeah, I know her for blank. We want someone to have an instant association with you and with your brand as to exactly what they know you to stand for and consistently talk about. If I and your audience can tell that from the marketing that you put out of exactly who you are and what you stand for, it is going to make it 10 times easier for any level of social SEO or also anything AI oriented to be able to pick you up. That is getting discovered. So we get discovered and we have verification. Verification is going to come through your social. Now, here's the thing that's happening when it comes to the social landscape right now. Social media is a place where we're getting a ton of volume. And that's because obviously with AI, it has become 10 times easier to produce a ton of content. It is not difficult to produce a caption. You can whip one out in Claude in 20 seconds. The same thing is actually starting to become true even with video editing. We can have videos that are literally pumped out and edited so quickly these days. And that is because we have AI to assist. Now, here's the problem though. Because we have so much ability to generate so much content, it also means that again, there is a saturation of tons of content. So how do we stand out? You want to make sure that when someone finds you, they're not finding information, they're finding a perspective. So it is not any longer an information age. 2021, we used to have the 3 tips to this, the 5 steps to this, the 7-step model to blank. And at the time, it felt like, oh my gosh, this is so valuable. We would save, we would share, we would download all of these different things of the guides, the PDF, the mini course that would help us to do this. It was all about information leverage. Who had the best information, the best models, the best frameworks. And at the time, it really worked. But then when AI entered the scene, it changed everything because it meant that information is no longer the leverage point as an online business now. It all comes down to the integration of that information or the perspective around that information. Your ideal client is somebody right now who can get tons of information in a moment's notice. What they don't have is decision-making and discernment, which is to know which of this information should they be applying, which of this is correct, which of this is something they should do now versus do later. There's still looking for that level of decision making because AI is not quite there yet when it comes to really making those high leverage decisions. But what also AI doesn't do is it typically doesn't actually unpack a unique perspective. It's delivering you information. And 9 times out of 10, even if it does have a perspective with AI, it's going to switch that as soon as you confront it. If you've ever put into AI to say, hey, I don't think this is right, or hey, I disagree with this, it goes, oh, you're right, actually. I disagree with it too. And you're like, what just happened? I just put this into AI asking it this question, and yet now it's telling me it changed its mind. This is where you need to put your stake in the ground. This is where we need to have a nemesis, something that we as brands, with this information that we talk about and with the thing that we help people with, decide what are we fighting against? What's the thing that we stand for? Why are we even here in the first place? And most importantly, how do we ensure that our frameworks, our information is truly unique and signature to us? Something that someone cannot just pick up and find somewhere else, something that they actually feel like, you know what, I know exactly where that comes from because these are not general. There's something that are helping me to integrate and they are also rooted in perspective. When we try to make the 2021 content today, it doesn't land. You're going to get tons of saves, if that. You're going to maybe get some people sharing, but the pieces that really get people going are when you give a lens, a perspective, a hot take, something of analysis that helps to break down something in a way that somebody has not actually seen before. So instead, what I want you to do now is with your content, don't teach people, give them your perspective and assessment. So I'm looking to not have information, but either how to integrate the information or your lens or assessment on what it actually means and giving it context. If you are in a place where you're like, I'm just going to overvalue for people and I'm just going to overgive, it is not that the principle of marketing of reciprocity doesn't work. It does. But the thing is, your ideal client is getting that 15 times over right now. So we have to make sure that we're delivering it in a different way that actually feels like us and feels different. Now, when someone consumes content, we know, if you've listened to other episodes, that there's 4 other ways that people come into our ecosystem, right? So this is also something that George shared as a model, which is the 4 paths to the peer. The 4 paths to the peer model essentially means that you have people that are going to find you and they're going to bounce. They're not going to do anything. They're going to find your social, skim your profile for 2 seconds and say, you know what? This is good, but it's just not really for me. I'm not going to follow. I'm going to keep going. They're not going to take any action. The second is that they're going to consume your free content. So this is going to be your social media, your YouTube, all of that. Third, then they're going to have what's called the opt-in, the thing that actually allows them to get nurtured, but they're not quite at a place where they're investing yet. And fourth, you have the actual purchase itself, which is obviously for all of us, our ideal scenario. Now, previously in 2021, we had all of our goals were send short form content and pump it to a lead magnet, pump it to a freebie, a VSL, which is a video sales letter, to something that will warm people up. Let's get them to register for a webinar. It was all about get them in, get them to take a next step. Here's the thing. Webinars, VSLs, and all of these different structures still do exist today, but they actually have a different function. So now when we find a brand, we ping pong in their ecosystem. So you might find someone on TikTok and then go to follow them on Instagram. You also might have people that you only consume on TikTok from or only on Instagram. You may have people that you watch their YouTube and you have people that you listen to their podcast. The thing that I can tell you, and it's part of why I am a big fan of long form content. Long form content in general is basically doing a small masterclass or webinar every single week. If you have a YouTube channel, if you have a podcast, you are literally able to get long form information to people that allows them to hear you at length, to understand your perspectives, to understand your models and your information, and also your unique transformation for them. Now, let's just say you don't have YouTube or podcast. There's also the option to nurture people with email, to be sending emails a couple times a week to get people understanding of, again, same thing, your approaches, your frameworks, your perspective. The thing that is also a tool, I'm not as much a fan of it, is using short form. So some people have no long form at all. They have no way to consume you for, let's just say, 20 minutes to an hour. It's not that you can't convert without that. You can, but it is much more difficult because let's just say I have 1-minute videos, right? Overall 60-second videos on TikTok or Instagram. That's great. But technically speaking, if you don't have some aspect of long form content, whether it's emails, podcast, YouTube, any of that, it means that you are literally missing out on an opportunity for someone to go super deep with you, not just wide. So it means if you only have short form content, your audience has to consume 60 pieces of your content to actually spend the same amount of time that someone in my ecosystem spends listening to this podcast every week. So 60 1-minute pieces are needed every single week in order to match the 1 hour someone spends with me on a podcast. So this is why it's really intentional that we say, okay, what is this ecosystem? And especially if you're someone who doesn't love making content, we have to ask ourselves, are we being really smart about where people are intended to go and how do these different assets and platforms and content and marketing really work in connection to each other? Now, the podcast and YouTube really did in some ways replace the webinar and the longer pieces of 2021. Not to say that they're not done now, but I think that they have a different purpose. To me, webinars and these different resources of a VSL, all of those are meant to be the final straw, in my opinion. The webinar should not be the thing where you're expecting them to go from super, super cold to now I want to buy. Or a VSL, which is a video sales letter, is also not something that I would recommend you have people go from super, super cold to now I want to buy. I like to leverage a VSL with clients in the point after social media, but before conversion. It's the last little step. Or even I have another client who literally does $600,000 in a week because of leveraging webinars. The webinar is not about taking someone from cold to sold. It's about getting that last step, that last activator that gets somebody over the finish line. And if we can do that on a webinar, all of the content leading up to that is what is actually going to warm those people. So now, compared to 2021, content is no longer just top of funnel anymore. It's middle of funnel and even in some instances, bottom of funnel, because this is where a lot of people are coming to make a decision. Whereas before, it was the spark that led them to the next step that then made the decision. So we have to look at when we think about even, let's say, an event that we're sending them to or a webinar, something that's a free resource, right? Let's go back to those 4 steps. The bounce, we've now talked about the content. Now let's talk about the nurture. The nurture of a webinar, of a podcast, of YouTube, all of these assets. The goal here is depth. We are looking for depth of perspective, depth of information, depth of our frameworks, depth of our unique approach. The thing that I find that most people are not doing well these days is they're using the old model of I don't want to give too much away. And I get the perspective of if I give a lot away, then no one's going to want to work with me. And if I give all this information, then why would they hire me? The thing you have to keep in mind is if in a YouTube video, a podcast, a webinar, a VSL, you do not give it away, what you're really doing is you're creating space between you and your ideal client, and you're leaving a gap of information that they have that they actually need in order to make a decision to work with you. So it means if your perspective is to hold back, that you are going to be someone who loses the sale because it actually just signals to somebody that they can't trust you, that it feels like there is this gap, there is this manipulation, which the current day consumer can literally smell from a mile away. So if you are someone that's going to do a masterclass, a webinar, a YouTube video, a podcast video, my biggest advice is give your best stuff away because your information is no longer your leverage. Your integration is. So it's something that if they do not get it from you, they're going to either be able to get it from Claude, from ChatGPT, etc., or from the business, from the brand that's not afraid to truly give all the information away. Now, here's the other thing that has also changed in today's current economy. In today's market, we do not want to take agency away from our consumers. If you were in online business in 2021, you would have seen that people used to do webinars that would not let you fast forward. They wouldn't let you basically have your own agency to take your own actions. Now, consumers and buyers do not want to be controlled. They don't want to be told when they can buy. They don't want manipulation. They don't want to be put on a timer. They don't want to feel like they are basically being sold to, that they are being manipulated. And we even see this when it comes to promotion. emotions. We're seeing consumers and buyers that are really, really frustrated with people saying, oh, I have X amount of spots left, or the doors close at midnight. And then you're like 3 days later, the doors are open and they seem to still have spots. People are smelling the manipulation and frankly, the lies within marketing and sales a mile away. So the thing that is really important when it comes to the way in which you're selling and the way in which you're presenting value and the way in which you're marketing, your skill in marketing now has never been more important. Because the thing is, you in today's current market have to sell without someone even knowing you're selling. So previously, 2021 era, we used to have where we'd have value, 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 call to action, webinar, value, 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 call to action. Now, from a perspective of marketing and messaging, we need selling weaved in. So this idea of I just give all the value and then an offer, it doesn't work anymore. It's not something that when you have this in content is going to consistently convert. Why is that? When you are on a piece of content and you're coming toward the end, what do both you and I know is coming? A call to action. At the bottom of a caption, guess what's going to be there? A call to action. On the end of a video, it's going to be, and by the way, call to action. At the end of a set of stories on Instagram, what's coming at the end? Call to action. So this is where as consumers, we're really smart and we recognize that there's a pattern. And so once we start to identify it, we become anticipating of that pattern. Now, on the contrast, what about the brands though that you consume and you feel like you watch all their stuff and you're like, I don't know, I just really want to work with this person. I just really feel connected to this person. I feel like they get me. I feel like I really resonate with their approach. They are selling to you in a moment where they're storytelling, not value, 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 pitch. So now the new skill set that is required in today's current market is to literally be able to weave in selling and not have value, 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 pitch because your consumer is looking for it. And as a result, they're leaving. It's typically why you'll see a dip in retention on videos, a dip in retention on a podcast, a dip in retention on a webinar. And that's because once the pitch comes, they aren't necessarily at a place where they want to listen, so they leave. So how can we get you to be inviting people into your world, inviting people to reach out to you, inviting leads to come your way at 2 minutes into a training or 5 minutes into a training or video? That now is the true leverage when it comes to selling. In 2026, it has never been more important than right now to have people be sold to without actually knowing that selling is happening. Because if you cannot, almost like a kid when you're trying to give them their pills or their veggies, if you can't hide it in there, they're going to sniff it out a mile away. And if they find that you are selling and manipulating, it's an instant turnoff. So what we need to do is make sure with our skill of marketing, messaging, and sales psychology, all of it is interweaved in every piece that we put out. Now, here's the thing when we're selling, the offer needs to not be a big grand reveal. It needs to be mentioned all the time. So even if, for example, you were seeing a content creator online and they're doing like an ad for a company, the last thing we want is them waking up and being like, oh, I got up this morning, I did my morning routine, and then I took my AG1. You're like, okay, this is an ad. On the contrast, you will have seen creators where you're watching something and then you notice that at the corner of your eye, you're like, oh, this is an ad. You didn't pick up on the fact it was an ad. That is the content that is doing well today and that is actually generating true massive sales. And that's because the content where it is baked in, where we are not even aware of it, it's so passive in the piece, is the thing that actually is going to get us to buy. So when we think about these big grand reveals of our product, this big grand offering of our service, we have to be very conscious of that because it can be a really big deterrent for people who are consuming you who want to work with you. Now, let's talk a little sales process, okay? In 2021, everybody was moving at like warp speed. It was this fast, fast, fast. I message, I apply, I get on a call, boom, I close. And I remember even when I was a sales closer, I literally had people that would book a call who came from an ad who I'd never spoken to before. And in booking that call, they literally converted 45 minutes later and they hadn't even met me before. So it really went to show that at that time, people were moving very quickly. Now, one of the common things that I'm hearing from everybody right now when it comes to people, especially who sell in the DMs, is they'll say, Kate, I'll message somebody and sometimes they don't get back to me for 3 days. The sales process is also a little bit slower than it once was. And that's because, again, buyers are really in a place of being in the driver's seat. They recognize that their time, their energy, their money is valuable. And so they are taking their time when making decisions. This is not to say that you can't sell somebody overnight. It's not to say that someone can't message you and say, I want in. These things do still happen, but the majority of leads in a sales process, it is taking longer. They're consuming longer, and they're actually at a place of consideration longer. Consideration of your offer, your service, your testimonials. They're going through and they're doing their research before they actually move forward with you. So there's two things I'm seeing. There's the pathway previously, which was again very fast and very straight lined. Now we are seeing people that have one of two options. They either want to have no controlled sales process, meaning they want to message in the DMs and they want to be able to convert there. They don't want to get on a call. They don't want to go through any kind of hoops. Their perspective is just send me the information and I'm going to decide here if I want to buy. On the contrast, we also have sales calls that actually are starting to take a really big turn. There was a season there for, I want to say probably around 3 years, where sales calls were starting to be almost a little bit demonized. They were at a place where people were like, oh, I'm anti-sales calls and I don't want to do them. What's interesting now is in the rise of, again, AI and so much that is so disconnected, meaning everything is so automated. Everything is the equivalent of a self-checkout these days. And so there is, just like when you go to the grocery store and you're like, man, self-checkout, I get it. I can do it myself, but can someone else just help me? That same feeling is actually something that your ideal client's having with you and with your brand. So some people, even in my own DMs, like I've said, hey, do you want to chat here or would you prefer to get on a call? And I have people that will say, I would love to get on a call. I'm like, amazing. So we get a call booked. So it's really an opportunity to go face to face and dive in. And I'm finding that more and more people are at a place where they want that interaction. And that's because when they get that interaction, when they get that actual depth with someone, it feels so different than anything else that they're getting online. So there's really two camps. You've got the person who loves the intimacy, and you also have somebody who really wants it automated. There are people right now who love that self-checkout at the grocery store, and there's people who are like, I always love somebody to help me. So even though we have both happening, we still have both options. Same thing is true for your business. So remember that the sales processes right now, if you're feeling like they're getting a little bit longer, if people are taking a little bit longer to make decisions, longer to even just answer your messages, that is something that we are seeing across the board. And also with that, if you are finding that you're like, everybody wants to get on calls, that's also something that I'm seeing with a variety of different industries, people wanting to really feel educated and supported and guided through the investment that they're making, whether that is through DM selling or through a call. So overall, the thing that we need to keep in mind is that when we are looking at the way in which people are going to buy, it has completely changed. The way they find us is changing. The way that they are going to consume us is changing. The way that they are nurtured is changing. The way in which they are literally being activated to buy is changing. And the way in which they close is changing. So this means if you are using the same model that you have used for a very long time and you feel like it's not working, this is why. I was talking to somebody yesterday and I said, your marketing and sales ecosystem is just that. It is that ball of yarn. It is that really all over the place ping pong. And 5 different people in your audience can take 5 very different journeys through your same funnel. One person consumes 3, one consumes 13, and one consumes 30 pieces. All 3 of them, though, can still be a great candidate for your offer that you're selling high ticket for. So if you're at a place where you're like, what do I do with this? I want to make this really simple. You first have to understand, how are people finding you? My honest advice, get data. The amount of people that do not know where people are finding them is mind-boggling to me. And I'm not talking like, oh yeah, well, like the application's coming from Instagram. The thing that you have to understand is just because somebody is submitting an application through, let's just say, your link in bio, doesn't actually mean that they came from Instagram. They could have come from Google to your Instagram, TikTok to your Instagram, YouTube to your Instagram. So one of the things that we do is we help people set up tracking so they can literally know, where are our leads coming from? And if we execute this in marketing, how many people are coming in to these channels? So we look to see what I consider, simply put, the cause and effect. If I press this button in marketing, what happens over here? Where do they go? If I press this button in sales, what happens when it comes to sales and conversions? Those are the 2 pieces we want to tie together like a string. Because if you can have those on a constant tie, you will always know what to push more of or less of in order to change what happens in your marketing and sales. So first, we need to understand, where are people coming from? Second, if you only have social media right now, you just have an Instagram account, you just have, say, Facebook, TikTok, podcast, YouTube. If you just have one platform, my honest recommendation is understand what is the thing that's going to actually nurture somebody. And if you just tell me, oh, they're going to consume a lot of content, there's still a step after that. Remember the 4 areas: bounce, content, nurture, convert. So we've got bounce and we've got content covered, how are you planning on nurturing somebody? If you don't know how to nurture them post content, you're creating a gap. And here's what you're going to see with this. If you've got great social media content and you've got great conversions, but you're like, I don't understand. I'm posting on social. I'm seeing people go to my website. I'm seeing people go to my application. I'm seeing people literally interested in working with me, but they're just not applying. The reason that that's happening is because there's a nurture gap. There is a nurture and understanding your approach, that you understand where they're at and their current state, that you understand the transformation of your offer. And also with that, that they really have a grasp of your unique approach, not just that you can help them solve that problem. So without that nurture bucket, what it means is you will continue to stay stuck in this place where you have a lot of curiosity, but you don't have a lot of conviction. And if people come in curious, you're going to get a lot of window shoppers, but you're not going to get people who say, yes, this is what I want. Let's go. I'm ready to invest with this. Send me the contract. Let's move. If you have people that are price shopping, information gathering, lots of objections, this is typically why we have a disconnect in that portion. And we have to make sure that we, number one, know where they're coming from. Number two, that we have good content ecosystem, that we know marketing wise, where are they consuming? Where are we nurturing them? What is the opportunity for them to take a micro commitment with us? That the lead magnet, the webinar, the VSL, what is the last little tipping point where the person just gets tipped over the edge before they convert? And then the conversion tool itself, the conversion way that you're actually getting people from inquiry to becoming a client. The thing that I want you to really, really focus on is adjusting how you are actually pitching your offer and how you're actually selling it. Because if you are somebody, like I said, who's trying to sell something, but you're like, I don't want to give too much away and I don't want to give over value to people, it will be the thing that doesn't actually allow people to convert. Because I literally just audited a sales call last week and of one of my clients. And in this call with one of my clients, the person mentioned another one of my peers in the space who's a big name in my industry. And it was interesting because in the call, they mentioned that this person did not make them feel very good. And it felt like it was saying what needed to be said from a marketing sales sliminess, just get me to buy thing with a lot of urgency. But the person was like, I didn't feel safe to invest. It didn't feel supportive. It didn't feel like it was something that was giving me the clarity and information I needed to move forward. And so as a result, she ended up in my client's inbox and on a call with my client. So the thing that is really important is when you're converting people right now, you have to also ask yourself, are you considering the current trust perspective, the current information that they're consuming, the current perspective that they have in the way in which you're converting people? If you are pressure sales, if you are taking away options and agency, if you are somebody who feels like you're like, you have to buy today, otherwise your audience is not buying it. This fake urgency, this fake one spot left, this fake of there's a time where you have to buy now, your audience is not buying it. So if you are using these tactics as your main lever from which to sell, it's going to be part of why your sales are not closing. The people who buy now are not people who have product urgency. They're not people who say last spot left, 3 days left. That's not the main trigger. It is a trigger, but it's not the main trigger that's causing people to buy today. The main thing that is going to cause people to convert is what's considered to be problem urgency. The things that you put out into your marketing, into your nurture agents, that you say in a call, that you say in the DMs, that help someone to realize this is not about 2 spots left. This is not about I can't get this next month. It's not about the fact that the offer's going away. It has everything to do with the fact that I need to do this. Otherwise, I'm not going to go there and get to my goal. Or I need to do this because otherwise, if I don't do this, I'm accepting that I'm okay staying here and staying in this ecosystem or this reality for a long time. And I'm actually not okay with that. So you have to, in all of these pieces of your ecosystem, make sure that there's something I call the cost of an action. The cost of an action basically meaning what is the cost of them staying the same and what is the cost of what they're actually doing when they're deciding not to achieve their goal. And you have to present that like a mirror to them consistently in all of your marketing and sales. Because if you do, that is the thing that causes somebody to move. People don't move now because of a timer. They move because you activated something inside of them. And if you can do that consistently, you will have the sales that you're looking for, paired with this amazing ecosystem of these different pieces. So I share this because I go on social media. I have people that do consultation calls with me and they're like, what do you see? What do you think? And I'm like, listen, your model's outdated. This process that you have here may have worked a couple years ago. It's not going to work anymore. We need to start to operate the business from a place that really looks to say, okay, what is the new process that someone's going through to make a decision? It's longer. It has more steps now. now, and it has different needs and desires of what they're looking for in order to get all the way to the end, which is becoming your client. So if you are somebody who's at a place right now and you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, I don't know. Do I have these pieces? Do I not have these pieces? Is there something that I'm missing? Is this why we're getting people that are messaging us and interested, but they're not buying? All of these scenarios, I can guarantee you, I have seen and I have audited and I have fixed. So if you are at a place where you feel like people are watching and they're curious, but they're not convicted, they're not closing, this is literally what we do. I want to invite you, shoot me a message on Instagram and be like, hey, I listened to the old way, new way of our funnels, and I definitely need a funnel audit. I would love to look at what it is that you have right now, what's going on in your ecosystem, and what are maybe some of those tweaks and pieces that you're missing that could really allow people to seamlessly convert inside your ecosystem, regardless of how many steps or different pathways that you have. So with that being said, I will see you on next week's episode. And as always, stay ambitious.